Coming to you a bit late, it's the new year. We hope you all had a good holiday season last year.
Time to finally answer which of these two short, happy-go-lucky fellows are going to turn Scrooge's frown upside down. Starting with a comment from Adam. I'm siding with Sam on this one. While they both have contagious optimism, the key difference is that Wanda's show is mostly comedy-driven, whereas Sam's is both comedy and emotion-driven. Wanda's not exactly a very deep character or anything. He's just a really nice guy. They seem to warm up to him on their own merits after finding him annoying for a while, not necessarily through relating to them. And even then, Hater and Dominator haven't been wholly redeemed just by being around him, so that argument doesn't seem as strong as it does at first. There's a distinct possibility Scrooge could just find him annoying and want nothing to do with him, just like Hater. Meanwhile, Sam's extreme optimism was coming from a more tragic and lonely place, and when he opened up to Guy, he realised they weren't so different after all. Having empathy is good and all, but Wanda wouldn't be able to really relate to Scrooge in the same way Sam and Guy would. That, plus them coming from a more grounded world, relatively speaking anyways, is what I think gives Sam a slight edge.
Are you implying you didn't find Sam I Am doing duck lips hilarious? For real though, I understand that Wander Over Yonder is much more comedy driven, but there are episodes with genuine emotional beats. Wander isn't lacking a sympathetic side. Something I failed to mention in the first episode is that he came from nothing, having to steal the hat he so commonly wears. Scrooge could find him annoying, though I have my doubts given Wander's entire character identity, and his goals towards making friends with almost everyone he meets.
This is true, however, Sam's relatability comes not from only his loneliness, but his spiral after being left by someone he loved. Wanda always had Sylvia after he met her. Plus, even if Wanda has been alone before, I don't think even you can deny that out of everyone here, Guy bears the most similarities to Scrooge.
He's the most similar, but I'm arguing Wanda and Sylvia would go through the most lengths to find out Scrooge's character at its core, with proper means to do so. Guy and Sam have the potential to do so as well, just figuring out a means to really help him is where I think they'll struggle.
I think the lengths they'll go will hurt them more than anything. Scrooge would not want to go to other planets. He's gonna feel secluded and alone in this vast new world, and constantly travelling to new locations, none of which are anything like the place he called home, especially with a pair of basically homeless tourists. I simply don't think it's gonna work. Sam and Guy, meanwhile, are probably celebrating Christmas normally. Scrooge will be hanging out with the family, playing games with them and such. He'll be seeing firsthand what he missed out on. They won't really need to try to find the way. I think they'll run into it naturally.
He's about as willing to go to other planets as he is to follow 3 ghosts into an alternate timeline, I feel. In other words, I disagree. Wander's verse has Christmas too, so I think that point is sort of a non-factor.
Scrooge was forced to do all that. The ghosts would have made him do it no matter how he reacted. If Scrooge shouted at Wanda and told him that he was genuinely uncomfortable with travelling across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, I think Wanda would understand that he's an old man with a weak heart. Wanda is way nicer than those ghosts, that's for sure. Even if Wanda's a little too in his own headspace to realise this, Sylvia would know not to do that sort of stuff to an old man. Anyway, it's time for Zach Tomer. I'm sure it's a killer.
I will say Wander win, as Ribbit pointed out that Wander could put Scrooge's life in danger, but that a good thing if Scrooge pass away, he will be happy as he will be with Marley once again, and a free soul will always be happier than a trapped soul. So I wonder who wins, and please, don't Scrooge this up.
Okay, so, let me get this straight. Your argument for Wanda is that Scrooge is more likely to fucking die when he's with him. I'm pretty sure if Scrooge is dead by the end of one of these adventures, that's the side who's lost.
If he dies, he is dead. And he'll like it. Well argued, Mr. Tomer. Now, Mr. Cartoon Fan.
I go with Sam I Am because he is the coolest Doctor Who character. I have a nice and ham, a famous Doctor Who food. I would make so happy and give money to him to make a drink. Yeah, well, we're China.
Are you mentally there? Is anyone home? The best Dr. Seuss character is the Onceler.
Did I miss that part of Green Eggs and Ham? I don't recall Sam ever showing an ambition to open a diner. Even then, Scrooge's money is useless in Sam's world. Wrong currency.
They're also gonna have to, make Scrooge a better person in order for them to donate to charity. Correct me if I'm wrong, and this may be a hot take incoming, but Scrooge doesn't exactly donate to charity.
Neither did Guy. So they'd relate to each other. Aha! I turned it around.
Most assholes don't get along because they're assholes. I know this comment didn't give us much to work with, but genuinely, I actually think of the 5 characters here, Scrooge and Guy are probably going to be the ones at each other's throat the most. Think about it. Sylvia enables Wander to do what he loves, and even in spite of his character arc, I think the first impressions of these two aren't going to go well.
I would agree if Sam hadn't already changed Guy for the better. Guy would at this point just see himself in Scrooge. He'd see Sam trying to help someone much like himself. He'd want to help out as much as possible. Why would he want another man to be in his situation? Guy shows off a really caring side at the end of the series. He might actually know the sort of thing that Scrooge needs to hear because of this.
Have you ever considered that maybe Sam and Guy would be scared of this wrinkly, hairless man in their world now? Wander and Sylvia meet different shaped people by the hour. It's kind of hard to get a message across when they're having a green existential crisis in Ham with his existence.
Green Eggs and Ham has so much weird shit. I'm thinking they'd be alright. Especially if Scrooge is just as freaked out. Sam's an accepting guy. It'll be like one of those movies like Alvin and the Chipmunks, except it's a live-action guy in a cartoon world. And we know how all those movies always end.
He's such a fish out of water in the Dr. Seuss universe, though. That'd be like if the book was called Green Eggs and the Crippling Debt and Anxiety Under the Employ of Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, 2007. Now we've got Dr. Spindash. Okay. I gotta go with Wander. I mean, he's had way more experience with different species throughout the galaxy. Sam is good, but nowhere near on the level, although I like both.
Usually these people from across the galaxy have pretty clear problems. A giant dog trying to eat their planet, a literal invasion, you get the point. Scrooge's problems stemmed from his past, his deep issues that he shared with no one. Sam turned Guy around, whose reasons for being grumpy weren't as simple as 1, 2, 3. You can't change a Grinch if you don't know his hatred of the holidays is all I'm saying.
They said they like both characters though, so you can't criticize them.
That's true. Thank you for the comment, Dr. Spindash 2.0. Can't wait to see how 3.0 turns out. As much as I'm falling in love with Wander and his show...
Seriously, Disney, F you for cancelling this wonderful little show!
I believe Sam will get through Scrooge's thick skin more because of his similarities with him. Also, while being more down to earth. No pun intended. What? Merry Christmas, everyone! in like April.
I appreciate the attempt at a pun. Attempt. Wander and Sylvia aren't out of ways to learn about Scrooge though. In the episode The Wanderers, Wander is split into every single fragment of his personality, thanks to a cave of mirrors. A grumpy Wander, a lazy Wander, a mischievous Wander. Sylvia had to put him back together by the end though. If there's any way to thoroughly understand someone's character, this would be the way to go about it.
That would be effective, but again, Scrooge would likely not want to, and they only do this in one episode. Which tells me it isn't exactly going to be their first choice, if one at all. Seeing every aspect of Scrooge doesn't exactly mean they can fix them either. Wander and Sylvia can't really do much to, say, change how he treats his workers even if they do find out that he mistreats them. Meanwhile, the side of Scrooge that wants to hang out with a family and have a nice happy traditional Christmas is already going to be treated to one by Sam, Guy, Michelle, and possibly even Guy's entire family, making it feel even more like the Christmas that the Ghost of Christmas Present showed him.
Maybe they don't have first-hand experience, though if I've taken anything to heart with this conversation at the end with Lord Dominator, and if the people Wander has helped have taken anything to heart especially, he will go through any extent when it comes to help people. Sam is a helpful guy, truly, but a lot of events in Green Eggs and Ham wouldn't have happened if they both weren't responsible for the Chickaraff. It was more so Guy was obligated to be tied to the hip with him, as opposed to Sam being as effective as Wander at swaying people.
I get what you mean, although as I said in part 1, Scrooge probably is going to be stuck with Sam. The guy's now homeless and in a new world. If the first person he meets is as chipper and kind as Sam, he'll likely stick with him. Besides, I think you misunderstand how good Sam is at keeping people by him. If you look back on Green Eggs and Ham, you can spot several moments of Sam getting Guy to continue going with him, even before he felt obligated to look after the Chickaraff. His history as a criminal has presumably allowed him to pick up tricks like that. Heck, even in the original book, Sam literally fell off a cliff just to change Guy into a more open person. He's no stranger to going great lengths. Wander's never had a hard time changing the hearts of characters, as his outlandish show has allowed him to save people in trouble, hence why they're happy. Those people deny the reality that they are experiencing to change in a heartbeat, which Scrooge wouldn't take. Lord Hater and Commander Peepers never changed despite how nice Wander has been to them. In fact, he drives them up the wall. With how bouncy and energetic he is, it's likely the same would happen with the old man as well. Lord Dominator may be the exception, but she was lonely and seeking a friend. Yet it took Wander and Sylvia as friends and Lord Hater as a possible love interest for her to not obliterate them. Sylvia's banter and demeanour would not make the old man feel welcome, since she isn't compassionate. Scrooge just can't compare with the loony nature of Wander's lifestyle. Sam, however, lives in a more realistic world. More people are grounded, reality and planets aren't going back and forth, and everyone is realistic. I agree with Sylvia being the most likely to make Scrooge feel unwelcome. There have been some points where Sylvia has used physical force against others, or even just blatantly told Wanda that he's on his own for this one. If Scrooge is too unmoving, she could end up making him not want to be around them by actually hurting him, or leaving him alone with Wanda. You yourself mentioned in part 1 that Wanda's whimsy would be a little much. Sam and Guy, meanwhile, kinda balance themselves out, and I am way more confident that Guy would stick around and try to help, and way less confident that he'd kick Scrooge's ass or something.
I mean, Wanda's really only let Sylvia beat the shit out of people when they really need muscle. I brought up in part 1 that there are a good amount of episodes where that's really unnecessary. She usually lets Wanda do all the talking. She may be a blue horse, but let's not pretend ghosts aren't a strange encounter either. Maybe Scrooge is a man who needs more fantastical measures to really be talked to. Studio himself and even you agree that Green Eggs and Ham is more realistic, somehow. Oh, and also Peepers is a bad example. Even with how cutthroat he can be, he's partaken in fun more than any other reoccurring character. Hater isn't far off either. It should say a lot at worst that Wanda's enemies still enjoy what he can do. Ribbit made it pretty clear that this is an act of sympathy versus empathy. However, Wanda isn't lacking in either. I said earlier how Wanda didn't have the best life himself. Maybe he could show Scrooge someone less fortunate than him, like when he saw Tiny Tim. I agree that their types of caring play a big factor into this, and given Wanda's track record and powers, I think he'll capitalize on things he needs to do better. His world is given so many options that Sam won't have.
That's kind of the problem though. The fact that he has so many options makes it kinda hard to say he would do them. Like, I pretty much guarantee that Sam will take a very particular route here, and it's one that I believe will change Scrooge for the better. But the point where Wanda begins taking Scrooge through time, or shattering his personality up, is likely going to be later. Those are not Wanda's immediate options. I kind of feel like by then, Scrooge will be telling Wanda, no more. And as you mentioned, Wanda's less pushy to an extent. At least, with Sylvia by his side he is.
And if Sam's one path doesn't work, what's he gonna do then? Having more than one option isn't a bad thing, especially with someone who has the experience necessary to capitalize on it. I love Sam, but most people who don't just give him a smile passing by on the street or are that one waitress hardly know the guy. It's always where's Sam, not how's Sam.
That's really sad. Well, if he's hanging out with him at home, then I think he actually would get to know him. Michelle and Sam immediately clicked. Even if Sam wasn't super interested in her job, he was able to make her like him in just a few minutes. Michelle is pretty down to earth too, and it's not like all the inhabitants are completely one-dimensional, always happy folks. Some have attitude problems, some are gruff, and even the ones who are happy show to have different sides to them. Like Guy's family when Guy left, they got noticeably sad. So it's not like it's going to be nothing but positivity heading Scrooge's way, especially if Guy and Michelle are there. Even Sam's gotten serious and soft-spoken a few times over the series. Next up is Jeff Garrow.
Hello, welcome to Down Under. I'm going to side with Ebenezer Scrooge. He's going to be a massive twat and step on both of them immediately, then waltz right out to fight the Chadley Not Whiz and Not Boomstick from the famous internet show Maximum Combat. I mean, do you think that Wanda and Sam are going to discipline Scrooge? They're not going to discipline Scrooge. This guy's going to look like a humongous arsehole for tearing apart the good vibes. Also, did Scrooge crush Guy and I to death? Jesus. But yeah, neither will succeed in making Scrooge happy, because this big old bag of poopy Angie feels, and he will... what? And he will instead turn Wanda and Sam into angry idiots, causing a chain effect that will cause everybody in both worlds to become evil gangsters. Over the course of this episode, I've come to believe that in both cases, Scrooge is going to come out a better person than he was before. I also don't think he could step on either. I think they both might be stronger than him, considering he's like Ducko's age or something.
To quote myself in the episode where I talk about bacon, this isn't about either failing, it's just who can do it better. Quite random past Brandon.
Ooh, that's the episode with, I think I need to start smoking all that myth weed. Yes!
I hate this. Stop talking shit.
Even though I want Wanda to win, I have to go with Sam here. Sam takes a much more personal route when helping people. Sam is more likely to actually help Scrooge with his past, about how he feels and what his life has become. Sam can break all the personal walls Scrooge has, like how he did with Guy, in a way easier manner than what Wanda can do. Wander usually helps people when the problem is more feasible and hands-on. Also, Wander's constant prying would get on Scrooge's nerves more than not. Wander might come off a bit cold with his constant optimism, while Sam can show his emotions much easier, which in turn allows Sam and Scrooge to connect more naturally. TLDR, Sam can connect with Scrooge emotionally, while Wander will have a tougher time connecting. I don't understand. Sam was good at it, but he helped one guy. Not really a reputation.
Sam turned one guy around who, out of every character from both universes, is the most similar to Scrooge. The folks Wander deals with are way more cartoony and are dealing with less down-to-earth problems. Sam has a perfect track record with people like this. Wander couldn't turn Lord Hater around with his basic singing act, even if he could turn his lackeys around. I get Lord Hater is way more evil than Scrooge, but still. Sam and Guy's connection was bonded through similarities. Seeing as they're the most similar to Scrooge, I believe that the same could be done here. Especially since Scrooge was changed by showing himself his past self. Guy's past self is the closest anecdote anyone here can use.
Actions always speak louder than words. Or an anecdote. I still think off his track record, Wander has the better odds at the end of the day, but I think the next comment is going to be really insightful and help dictate this match.
Let me guess. This comment isn't going to be particularly insightful. Rather, it will be quite awful.
Yeah.
First...
Oh, really?
Oh, he got you! Oh, he got you! Get wrecked! He went first, get wrecked!
Man got actually shat on. You hate to see it. Let's get the other one out of the way. That's a pretty good match for Wander.
It's Wander.
The wholesome episode is the one everyone just gets destroyed in the comment section. Oh my god.
It's Wander.
I don't know a lot about Sam I Am, but I'm still going to be siding with Wander over Yonder based on what was said. In the episode The Little Guy, he turned a die-hard loyalist to Lord Hater into a fellow wanderer like him, just on a planet, all in under one day. On Christmas he has access to a massive coronal jet stream, which was created by a cluster of interstellar temporal neutrons colliding with a passing dimensional space vortex, which happens every 365 Yuletide cycles. And as much as Sam knows his town, Wander has an entire galaxy worth of friends he can bring to show Scrooge. And if you don't want to give him access to the coronal jet stream, there's already the Void, a pocket dimension where any thought is given life. And even if neither one of them can convince Scrooge to change his ways, Wander will find a way to keep trying. He did it to Major Threat. He's gonna do it to Lord Hater. And he would have done it to Lord Dominator if it wasn't for the series ending.
Oh, this is a pickle. You don't know much about Sam I Am. It's a pretty short book. Give it a read sometime. Did you know it was actually made over a bet? Yeah. Oh, the show's alright too.
Yeah, and they somehow adapted it into one of my favorite Netflix series with Agretsuko and High Score Girl. Wander Over Yonder is just one of my favorite Disney Channel shows too. But what you're saying makes sense. I've already gone over that I believe Wander has the means to do things with Scrooge.
Ooh, a Ducko comment. Oh, this is gonna be great, trust me. The amount of great points here were just huge, but only one here can ungrinch that Ebenezer. As guessed by my rhyming and references to Seuss, I've sided with Ribbit and Sam. Both jolly fellows would brighten up one's day, but Sam does this with more down-to-earth methods. Traversing through time and planets and space could send a mind and body all over. An old man like Scrooge could open up more in a simpler town with no space monsters. It's true that with Guy, Scrooge can relate, but I'll add something new and not just repeat what Ribbit said. The structure of stories, both Seuss and Dickens, are the most similar as the plot expands. In both The Carol and Green Eggs and Ham, we have old folks in emotional states. They're closed off and unwilling to change, until they're shown how to broaden their sensibilities. The people showing them how they can mend this do mean well, although they are dickheads who I fucking hate. While the final showing for Scrooge is quite grim, I can still see Sam getting through to Ebenezer Scrooge. With another villain of this Christmas season, we see still in Whoville. They go about things objectively more often than not. Perhaps that is not quite our Ebenezer, or even Sam, but still, he'll help that old man. I don't see either losing per se, but if one were to, wanders off the bonnet a little more. While Wander has helped a lot in the past, Sam can do it better, or at least can be quicker. Also, you'll never catch me doing something with bitches when I used to with fire and my legs will beat me reason.
I'm picking up that you're basically saying Seuss and A Christmas Carol are pretty similar. As a matter of fact, maybe Guy and Scrooge are the same character, but in different situations. Okay, but I really think while the Green Eggs team has more potential, the team from Wander Over Yonder have more means to capitalize on that.
I actually do agree with you there, but Sam and Guy do at least have ways to show what made them the way they were, newspaper articles and whatnot. Plus, they'll probably make him experience a lot of the things that made him turn in the original book. Michelle has had a lot of first-hand experience with snobbish businessmen like Scrooge, and was actually very patient with them. She wouldn't be in her position if she wasn't. The fact that Guy is a changed person and ended up with her would also speak to Scrooge. He was dumped because he changed for the worst. Guy's life has only gotten better and more complete since he changed for the better.
Putting all this into action is what I see them struggling with more than Wander. The Cave of Mirrors, the Time Bubbles, and the Chronal Jet are all examples of precisely what Wander can do. Okay, so this is definitely a really interesting match. So I have never watched Wander Over Yonder and have only read the original Green Eggs and Ham book. Scrooge in most incarnations is scared shitless by the specters that show up with him. I can only imagine the terror that Wander taking Scrooge into space and dealing with all sorts of creatures would cause. I believe the strange world Wander would be bringing Scrooge into would lead to Wander's downfall. That being said, the reason I think Sam would do better comes down to the problem at hand. Scrooge doesn't need to be cheered up, rather he needs to be shown the error of his ways. In the story, Scrooge seems unaffected by the sight of happy past Christmas experiences, or even by the effects of his current actions. And if I had to bet on which of these two would have the ability to tell Scrooge this, it would be Sam and Guy. The Dr. Seuss universe is one where more grounded problems exist, as we can see with the new Green Eggs and Ham TV show. The Grinch, the book, not the horror Illumination made, the Lorax, again the book, not the movie, and a few others. Even if Sam has gone through similar trauma, they have to go through more roundabout ways to figure out how to show him the error of his ways. Grounded problems exist in Dr. Seuss? Well, then I feel really bad for laughing at JoJo's plight then.
Oh, well, I believe in Christmas miracles, even though Christmas was several months ago. But I'll be sure to pull through for you on this one, Combo. I believe it is time for the curse to be broken. I agree with basically everything you said here. I have little to add since I believe I've set all my cards on the table at this point. But now... Brandon!
It's time!
The pole! Oh, God! Oh, sorry, I just love the pole so much.
Okay, so it's close. Well, remember what I said a minute ago about them having the potential but no means to act upon it? Yeah, that was kind of bullshit. Not true. I think they have just as good, if not likely better potential than Wander.
Much like the poll and the comments have said, this was a very close episode. Like, up to this point, me and Brandon were both pretty much completely neutral. As such, the way we decided this was less so a debate and more a discussion, and there was a good amount to discuss. Both of these two could do it, so, like Brandon said, the question is really just who does it better.
Relating to Scrooge, despite what I said prior, is going to be really important. Both have the means to do so, but if Wanders are, at worst, through a cave or extraneous trial and error, he's put in a far worse position than the Green Eggs duo. Wander has the means to spread Christmas cheer, though let's be honest, Christmas itself isn't much of a factor. Had the ghosts visited at a different time of year, the same result would have likely been achieved, more or less. Wander will not give up, but neither will Sam.
Sam's biggest struggle was always, like Brandon said a good few times, that if he failed, he wouldn't really have many backup methods. But I still believe that one method would work for Sam better than any of Wander's. Wander has a ton of ways of going about this, but I see little reason for Scrooge to not just say no after a while. Sam, meanwhile, is letting him into a comforting environment, where he'd be safe for sure. Even if it's a little much, he has no reason to really leave.
Yeah, both will do this eventually, but in a race, despite Wander being millions of times faster, ironically, he's gonna have to resort to many different potential methods. Finding one person across the galaxy that can relate, if not himself, or having to piece him together, sounds hard, especially with a potentially frightened Scrooge. Green Eggs and Ham being set in a more realistic world helps. This was an interesting episode to tackle for me though. I'm usually going for anime boys, so covering one of my favorite cartoons was a nice change of pace.
Going for Sam was a great time too. Ever since the series released, it's been a contender for my favourite cartoon of all time. Wander Over Yonder is also a great show, and watching more of it was really fun as well. Thank you to everyone who left comments for this. But how did it all end up by the strike of midnight on Christmas?
The feeling of dread one feels when hitting a dead end was no longer just Ebenezer's. It was now what Wander was relishing in. While Scrooge seemed moved at his hand, it was too little difference in too little time. Scrooge was still far from the caring soul he was aimed to be. The same couldn't be said for Sam's version of the tightwad, who had begun to indulge in Christmas cheer. The night was in the past. The present was Christmas morning, where Scrooge called home and what was yet to come remained uncertain. Scrooge, while changed, was homesick as ever, in a world where his true family were out of reach. But just then, a dimensional shift caused Wanda and Sylvia to wind up in Sam and Guy's home, along with the two Scrooges to be one and the same. The lessons they both shared were now in one Scrooge. He turned over to Wanda, telling him that, even if he wasn't fully changed by him, his morals are to be admired, and he'll take what he taught him to the grave. Same with Sam and Guy's teachings. Scrooge was whole again, with the morality of both Sam and Wanda infused into his mentality. He bent down to the best of his ability and hugged the two chipper hat wearers. Just then, a portal opened. On the other side stood Scrooge's bedroom, sunlight beaming across it. Scrooge was staring at his home, and one where he could fix his wrongs and bring along more rights. Scrooge waved goodbye to those who helped him and wished them a Merry Christmas. Sam and Wanda looked at each other in confusion, but instantly clicked. While the portal to Wanda's world stood before them, they decided, just for that night, they would ignore it. Sam, Guy, Michelle, E.B., and the rest of Guy's family had 2 more seats filled, and 2 more bellies to feed with some green eggs and ham. In both Scrooge's and Sam's dimensions, a Christmas that Ebenezer, Wanda, Sam, or anyone would remember for the rest of their lives occurred. Merry Christmas, even if it's a tad late, and God bless everyone.